Hello, Alex Lafkus here. I was asked by a gentleman a little while ago about suggestions to break out of the 18 to 22 inch range on Browns. Ooh, got some fly tying material on my hat. Um, so I'm going to dive into that a little bit, and this is sort of how I look at targeting bigger Browns. And I would say probably the first thing to think about is that there are certain times of year that those fish want to feed. Um, they're the apex predator in your river, most likely. So food is always available for them. So you got to figure out when resource scarcity is at its highest, when they're susceptible to being caught on flies. Um, some of the times here I really target are going to be, let's start in the winter, spring, whatever you want to call it, the pre-runoff time phase, which is usually cold water, but it's before the water comes up and dirty and there's access to a lot of food. So pre-runoff is a big one for me. That's usually a little longer period of bite as far as hours in the day. That's nice because they're starving to death. Um, so that's the first one I really look at. The next one is going to be sort of receding water post your highest runoff, when the water is starting to clear and you get about 48 degrees. That's kind of the number I look at. It seems like at 48 degrees, your metabolism on your bigger fish is starting to pick up. So they're going to look for food more frequently. Your smaller fish aren't going to feed real good, and you're not going to have as much food active as or available as you did during the high water period. And once you get into the 50-degree water, it seems like when you get into the 50-some degree water, it's minnows and there's just a lot more going on. So the fish get to have shorter windows. So I always look for like 48-degree receding water in the spring. Then you kind of got your summer stuff, which is, your major hatches are going to draw them out, but it's a little trickier. So then I would go from pre-runoff, 48-degree receding water in the spring. Usually you're 48, 52, up to about 55 is fine. Your windows get shorter as the water temp warms, so it's more about right spot, right time. And then it's kind of your standard issue. Once you start getting in 60s and stuff, now you're kind of dry fly season. So you're hunting them on dry, whatever you're doing there. And then I'm going to shift probably, most of us experience it September-ish, which is the start of your pre-spawn bite. And you might even start seeing it mid-August once water temps start dropping and getting, lower 60s coming off their summer highs, the first cold nights. But if I'm looking for big fish, I'm looking more towards pre-spawn. So a couple weeks before spawning in Michigan, it's usually like mid-October they spawn. So I start looking late September, early October. Those windows do tend to be short as well. It's perfect incoming fronts, the perfect condition days, where it's a little trickier timing. But they're there and they're at their maximum potential of the year. They're going to be big and fat. The advantage you have that time of year, some of your biggest fish are leaving where they were at all summer, and they're starting to move into areas that are a little less familiar to them, so you have access to them. When they're living in the woodpile they're in all year, it's a little trickier. If you're getting these fish starting to transition to gravel areas and move around, you get your opportunity at them. I take off the spawn. I think it's silly. Let them do their thing. They're just sitting ducks at that point. The next big one's post-spawn. Usually starts for me here in the upper Midwest, low 40s, upper 30s, when the fish are really done spawning and they got to feed. And they know they have to feed. Massive cold fronts in the fall do it and really push them to where they have that urgency that they know they have to feed now, because if they don't, they've got a long winter to overcome. So they're going to feed heavy then. Obviously, they're nutrient deprived, they're thinner, they're usually a little bit beat up, but you can get some really big fish that time of year. Now, one thing to keep in mind with all of it is moon phases do matter no matter the time of year. Just nature's way. I don't know why. You see it matter. Moon phases are critical. I would say that weather trumps moon day to day But if I'm booking something a long time out in advance, I'm looking at moon phase, and I'm going to understand there's going to be windows in there where fish you might not see other times of the month will be out. Meaning new or full moon going in. Usually I prefer going into it than coming out of it, but some of that has to correlate with the weather as well. So if I'm going to hunt big fish, I'm going to choose water correctly, or identify water that can produce big fish. Usually it's lower density water that has more. Lower density is going to usually mean warmer temps, which also means more food, less competition. Fish will tend to grow faster due to the availability of food in their growing seasons. So you're going to go to lower density water. I prefer bigger rivers. I feel like the bigger fish in bigger rivers are easier to catch. You can approach them differently. You can be further away. If you're fishing a small creek with big fish in it, approach and getting to those fish before they know you're there becomes very difficult. So I'm going to focus on areas where I know I have a chance. And I'm more of a streamer fisherman than a night fisherman. If you're fishing at night, some of those smaller rivers you can get those big fish out of. It just becomes fighting through smaller fish to get to big fish. I've personally seen giant fish come out chasing streamers and had a small one grab it beforehand. That happens. And if you're fishing over a lot of small and mid-sized fish, a bigger fish wants to hunt longer and take their time getting to the prey and making sure it is prey before they eat it, and those smaller fish will grab it quicker. So that's one thing to think about. So I do go to bigger rivers. Also, if you're a fly angler, a lot of times if you're fishing a river that has a lot of bait fishermen and stuff like that, that gets really hard. You're better off going to an area I feel like you're better off going to an area that gets way less pressure, even if it doesn't have the number of fish, just to try to find fish that are dumber and will eat your fly. If they're getting beat on with bait and crankbaits and glide baits, they're going to be wise. I mean, those big fish that I see eat bait in Arkansas, they eat bait or get yanked on with a bead or an egg. They lose that desire to chase a streamer. It doesn't matter if they've never eaten a streamer, they're terrified now. So that is important. I'd rather go down a couple sections where it's less popular and hunt those bigger fish out. I think about areas like the lower Yellowstone. I mean, get east of Big Timber, get downriver. I think about that's where I would go. I think about way down on the Bighorn. I think about the way upper end of the Missouri. Like sections that aren't known for the real good trout fishing. If I were out west, I would be spending the majority of my time on those sections. Like PA has a bunch of rivers like we have, which are mix of smallmouth and trout. Those rivers are probably going to have huge trout. They just might only bite a few months a year. That's fine. Those are where you're going to get your big ones. So you have to target them if you want to catch them. If you're fishing over huge volumes of fish, the chances of you finding those really big fish you're looking for is going to be harder. You also have to have a mindset and a mentality. You almost have to have your muskie mentality where if it's not 2 foot, it doesn't count. You go to areas that don't have many fish. Sometimes you just run big flies and say, look, if I don't get bit, that's fine. But if I get bit, it's going to be the right one. And big, I'm talking 8, 9. There seems to be the kind of a diminishing return once you get over 9. It's very rare that you see it matter more. It seems like a lot of the big fish I catch are on that 8-inch size. That seems to really be the size for the biggest ones. Although I've caught a lot of big fish on 4 and 5-inch stuff too. But if I'm just searching for the biggest one, when I guide, I want to run 4 to 5-inch stuff because that's going to get you your 18, 20, 22, 23 and bigger. If you're just personally fishing and don't want anything to do with that, you just run that 8-inch thing and wait for them to turn on and go. And when they do, their hour this day or their hour that week or whatever, you'll see some bigger fish. So you've got to understand that. You've got to be willing to go and try and fish hard and get skunked. But if you start putting some of these things together and you're going, okay, we're post-spawn right now. We have a big front coming in. Water temps are dropping and you're getting into winter. I'm going to go throw the big fly over the big fish and see what happens. Like, that's how you end up making it happen. Usually it's not going to the same beat that everybody fishes all the time and you happen to be the one who gets it. That's just getting lucky, and that's going to happen. But if you actually want to target those fish, you have to try to catch them. You can compare it to catching big muskies too. Like, there's very few muskie fisheries that are super high density that have the giant fish as well. There's obviously your random ones, which are your random ones like the White River too, which for trout, and you got Lake St. Clair, which has the big fish and has a lot of fish. But a lot of times, like I look at the muskie fisheries in my backyard that are horrible, but we have giant fish. So very few fish, takes a lot of hours, might get a huge one. That's how you kind of got to approach it with brown trout too. So it becomes a hunt, it becomes a mindset, and people do get lucky, but if you base yourself hoping to be that one guy that gets lucky, just play the lotto, and weigh everything in your favor, and you're gonna see more of them. Hopefully that answers some questions for some of you guys really trying to get up into those bigger fish. It's fun. It's just different. It's very different. So please leave questions down below in the comments. I'll get back to them. Any other suggestions for videos? Great. I need stuff to do. And like, subscribe. I appreciate all of that feedback. It helps me stay motivated. So hopefully you learned something there. Hopefully that'll help some of you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.